Story time about the scariest night of my life. A lot of background information. So the one weekend, my sister and I decided that we were going to go to my stepdad's, and her best friend was going to come also. I was around 13 at the time. Well, my stepdad and my mom had been broken up for about a few months, but my dad was okay with us going to our stepdad's because he had been with our mom for around 7 years and he's always been good to us. And my stepdad's was 2 hours away. So fast forward, we get to his house, and my sister and her friend wanted to go to a party. Now, me being older now, I knew that they didn't want to bring me because they were around 16 and I was only 13, but I still tried to tag along. Well, they weren't really talking to me or anything, and I hadn't seen my mom in almost a year. So I told my stepdad that I wanted to go and see her, which was a super big deal because she absolutely hated my stepdad. And she didn't want him around us. And by the way, she lived like 5 minutes from him. So if she found out that we went all the way up there to see him and not her, she would have flipped. So he drives me to my mom's house, like for part 2. Part 2 about the worst night of my life. So before I got to my mom's house, I called her. And I pretty much just told her that I was with my stepdad and I wanted to come see her. Like I said, she lived 5 minutes away. So as soon as we pull up, she walks outside. And she starts screaming at my stepdad. She's like, "Those are my kids. You're not allowed to see them, blah, blah, blah." Even though my dad had full custody and he could decide who we could and couldn't see. So after that, we walk in the house. She isn't saying anything. And this house is pretty much like a trap house. There was a knife holding the door shut. Not a kitchen knife, like an actual knife that you stab people with. She's like, "You can sit down, make yourself comfortable." And I didn't want to sit down because I saw needles everywhere and I just saw a rat crawl under the couch. So I was like, "No, I'm fine." And then she was like, "Sorry, not everybody can be rich like you." Which, just to make clear, I'm not rich. I just knew that she was doing drugs with her boyfriend in that house. After that, she pulls the knife that was holding the door shut out and points it right at me, like for part 3. 3 about the worst night of my life. So before she points the knife at me, she had been in the kitchen, right? So I went to go and sneak out the door. That's whenever she ran over, ripped the knife out of the door, and pointed it right at me. And she's like screaming a bunch of shit at me. And she's like, "Oh, what, are you gonna tell your dad that I pointed a knife at you?" And I told her, "Yeah, like, what the fuck do you mean? Am I not gonna tell him?" So at this point, she tries to take my phone. I told her, "No, you're not taking my phone." And at this time, my sister's also texting me and yelling at me because she had told me that I should not go to my mom's house. Probably for that exact reason. So a few minutes later, she hears her boyfriend pull up. I had never met her boyfriend. Like I said, I haven't seen her in probably almost a year. As soon as she hears him pull up, she looks at me and she says, "Go out the back door." She literally hurries up, takes me to the back door, and I have to run out the back door. I don't even know where I am. My sister and stepdad were waiting at the gas station across the street, so I ran over there really quickly. And then a few things happened after that. Let me know if you guys want a part 4. 4 about the worst night of my life. Just a little side note, I am in bed, so it's going to be a black screen, and you can probably hear my dog snoring. I'm just going to go from my point of view the rest of the time because I texted my sister, but I think she's sleeping. So pretty much I had to call my sister after my mom told her to go out the back door. And there was a Sheetz right across from where she was. But since she had to go out the back, she just saw like all woods and no gas station. So I got on the phone with her. She runs over to the gas station. And when we get back to my stepdad's house, we call our dad and let him know what happened. And the police actually got involved. And they had called my dad because my mom had called them and told him a bunch of stuff that just wasn't true. Like saying that my stepdad was a pedophile and stuff. Just like saying stuff that could actually ruin this man's life. And usually my stepdad would come pick us up and then drop us back off. But the police said that my dad had to come get us tomorrow morning, even though he had full custody and could decide who we could go with and stuff. So my dad came the next day and picked us up.
So did you guys know that our typical search engines are only 4% of what we see on the web, which is like Google, Bing, Firefox? I'm going to be talking about some of the most popular websites on the dark web. So get ready because this is going to be intense. So here's a photo example just to give you guys an idea of what this looks like. At the top is the area that we do our research for school on, or stalk our exes, I don't know. And then 500 times larger than the surface web is the deep web. The deep web is filled with information that we cannot access, such as medical documents, iCloud, personal information. Like I obviously can't Google what your family history or intake forms say, so that's where this is stored. And then the dark web holds the last 6%. This part of the internet was created by the US Navy in the 1990s, and it was made so spies could share info without being tracked. Well, then the government decided to release it to the public. And you need a specific software to go to it called Tor, which stands for the Onion Router. It hides your identity and gives you access to non-surface web pages. And on this section of the internet, you can do things like like buy people's credit card information, get counterfeit money, participate in drug trafficking, hire hackers and hitmen, and way worse. Okay, so this is part 2 to my series on the dark web. So all of these websites are listed in very long, hard to remember codes that change very frequently to avoid law enforcement. And instead of using .com, .org, .net, you use .onion. Well, one of the biggest websites on here is called Silk Road. This website is responsible for 1.1 billion in transactions in 1 year. It is a massive drug market. You can buy things like counterfeit money on here, also Facebook accounts to hack into, fake passports, stolen credit cards, and I may or may not know a few people who have gotten their fake IDs from there. Honestly, not uncommon. Now, there's also hitman websites on here as well. For example, you have something called Assassination Market. And y'all, this is insane. On this website, a victim will be added to a list of targets. Users will bid Bitcoin on when they think this target is going to die. The most accurate bidder gets the whole pot of Bitcoin. The problem is that many of these users start to just participate themselves so that they can win. Like they become the hitman, which is way cheaper than just hiring an actual hitman. But there are theories on who's actually responsible in controlling all of this. Welcome back to my series on the dark web. The big theory surrounding the hitman websites is that the government may still be in control of the dark web and be very aware of who is where, even though it appears that they're not. Because it was literally created by the government, how would you be safe from the government? And in actuality, the theory is that they may just be letting people do the dirty work for them. Like they're the ones who might actually be putting hits on people. But we will probably never know. The dark web goes so much deeper than this because of websites like Human Products, which sells food, belts, wallets, and clothing made from, you guessed it, humans. So I don't know if anyone's in need of a nipple belt, but this is literally the kind of things that they sell. Of course, there's even darker stuff like red rooms, cannibalism, and human experimentation, but I'm actually going to go into detail on that on my Instagram because I know if I post it here, TikTok will take it down. So go over there, go to my middle tab where my reels are, and you guys can see the most intense part of the series, but there's a fat trigger warning on those videos, just FYI. But you will get to see me take off this makeup look. Okay, so on my FYP lately, I've been seeing so many videos of like, watch my husband fall out of love with me, which is exactly what I watched happen whenever I went through my pregnancy with my boyfriend's child. So in December of 2019, I found out that I was pregnant and I was so excited. And my boyfriend was overjoyed. We literally had one of the best relationships during this time. But once COVID hit in 2020, I ended up getting laid off of work. He continued to work, but I felt like it was pointless for me to find another job just because I was about to have a baby and raise a kid. And in April, we get to find out the gender, and guess what? It was a boy. I was extremely happy, but then I just started to notice that he stopped caring. Like I would be like, hey, the baby is kicking, and he would just be like, okay. Completely monotone, completely blank face. Then June comes around and I ended up gifting him an iPhone 11 Pro Max. Since it was under my name, I had access to see who could text and call him. And I know a lot of his family's numbers, including cousins and aunts, but there was one number that I didn't recognize that stood out the most. And the messages between him and this number would not stop until 3 a.m., which is when he would go to sleep. So I decided to go up and ask him who is more important than me and his son. Storytime part 2 on my boyfriend cheating on me with his coworker and his ex. So his response to me asking who is more important than me and his son is, no one, babe. I just said okay, and a couple months go by and I go into labor. He's not even excited and doesn't even try to care. A few months later, and I see that number pop back up again. And I also noticed that there was an exchange of pictures going on. So I decided to call the number up and be like, hey, who is this? How do you know my boyfriend? And she responded with, who is this and why do you need to know this? Because I'm with him. I was bawling and I tried to confront him on it, but he literally denied it. And then he threatened me because I don't work that he would take my son away and get full custody. And because of all this crap, I just shut up and agreed to make it work for our son. And then not even a few weeks later, I see that number pop back up again and I lose my ish. Now, I don't condone violence, but the second that this man got home, I was so upset that I ended up punching him and he fell into the wall. I went through his phone and ended up finding out that he was also talking to another girl as well. So I whipped the phone around in his face and I was like, who is this? Storytime part 3 to my boyfriend cheating on me with his ex and coworker. Now that I officially have this man's phone, I can see everything. When I asked him who the first girl was, he was like, no one. And I was like, no, straight up, who is she? And he finally admitted that she was a coworker. So I go through his pictures and I see that they took selfies together, like really close selfies. And he also took a pic of her butt. There's literally a whole video where she's shaking it for him. I started bawling and I threw everything at him. I left the house for several days. We agreed to try to fix things again, but I'm taking his paychecks and messing around with his cousin now to get revenge on him. And honestly, him and his cousin look a lot alike. So if I ever were to get pregnant again, he wouldn't even question it. Also, if you didn't catch on, the other girl was his ex-girlfriend and she still reaches out asking him for money and asking him to move in with her. And even when we were trying to work things out, he would constantly think about leaving our family for her. If you guys have a story that you would like me to share on my TikTok, follow my Instagram and I'll show you how. So I literally thought people were joking when they were talking about stepsisters getting with their stepbrothers. Turns out it's not a joke, and I just found out that my boyfriend cheated on me with his stepsister. When I was a freshman in high school, I got into a lot of trouble and ended up getting my phone taken away for 6 months and had no social media for a year. My parents literally didn't allow me to have Snapchat until the summer before my senior year. But I was allowed to have an Instagram, so the moment that I was allowed to have my socials back, I made an update on my story. And within a few hours, the boy that I had been talking to before I got my phone taken away swiped up. We started messaging, talking again, hitting it off all over again, and even though he lived about 2.5 hours away, within a week we started dating. I actually had a few other friends that were dating guys in the same town, so I was like, if they can, so can I. After dating him for a few months, I decided to invite him over to my dad so that they could meet. Both my dad and him hit it right off the bat. Chef's kiss. Also, we can call this guy Darren. I noticed that he was super weird with his phone and he would put it in his pocket anytime I was near. I asked him what that was about and he was like, well, I just don't want to be on my phone. It seems rude. It seemed like a logical response, so I brushed it off. But the next day, a girl messaged me saying that she was dating Darren. So my boyfriend ended up cheating on me with his stepsister. And also other girls as well. So once this first girl reached out to me and said that she had been dating Darren, I blew up in his face. She explained to me that they had been dating for a few weeks, so I ended up breaking up with him. But then he was blowing up my phone and threatening to unalive himself, so I got extremely worried. And I ended up just giving in to getting back together with him. And once I got back together with him, things were pretty much a smooth ride for 6 months. It didn't seem like he was talking to any other girls, and he would come to my mom's house on one weekend and then my dad's house on the other weekend. So we were seeing each other every weekend. And it was so nice until I got a message from a different girl who also claimed that they had been dating. So again, I blew up in his face and I broke up with him. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And once again, the manipulator in him made a reappearance and he blew up my phone just crying, saying that he was going to end his life, and again, getting me to fall for his stupid tricks. This time I decided to go about it a different way and get all the social media passwords. I would log in and check periodically, but if you guys remember, I did not have a Snapchat. So the day that my parents allowed me to have one, I went ahead and logged into his. Storytime about my boyfriend cheating on me with his stepsister and other women. So once I was allowed to have Snapchat and logged into his account, I saw him messaging multiple other girls, including his stepsister. And when I tell you guys I scrolled up on these messages and found out that he had been sleeping with her too, this had been going on for 2.5 years before he finally called things off with me and broke up with me. We met up to exchange things and I gave him all of his stuff back, but he didn't give me any of my stuff back because he forgot. And he tried to give me his own stuff back, saying that we were on a break and would get back together. Because I called things off with him, he ended up throwing all of my stuff like my clothes, jewelry, Beats headphones in a fire pit and burned them. As if he was the victim. Like, what did I do to you? You were the one sleeping with your stepsister our entire relationship. After about 3 months, he showed up with a new girlfriend on his Instagram. And she ended up messaging me asking why he still had pictures of me all over his room and why my necklace with my name on it was hanging in his truck. If anyone's wanting to know how to get revenge on someone who spread rumors about you, listen to this story and it may come in handy. So I had a friend that we can call Miranda who was obsessed with me. I was genuinely friends with her, but she would never give me a break. I could not get a breather from her at any point in time. Everywhere I went, she went. And this girl would actually get so upset with me anytime I would go over to another friend's house. I knew she was really insecure and just trying to get attention, so I tried to be patient with her. However, one day I just could not take it anymore. I got into a massive fight with her over how overprotective she is. I literally said, "You are a stage 5 clinger." And in response, this girl ended up joining my basketball and softball team, which I've been on for forever. She told her mom that I was bullying her, which was a complete lie, but then her mom went to the coaches. She got me kicked off the team and then continued to spread rumors about me. I ended up losing my best friends and even my boyfriend over the rumors that she spread about me. So that's when I decided to get revenge. So I decided that I was going to send her over an apology gift with makeup in it, which was a mix of drugstore items and poison ivy. So I got revenge on my obsessive best friend for spreading rumors about me. So I put together an apology gift for her for bullying her, even though I did not. The gift that I put together was some makeup I got from Walgreens, but I decided to add some poison ivy to the eyeshadow so that she would get a rash. I then set up a hidden camera and watched as she put it on. And as expected, the rash started to form. After she noticed, I started to tell her off and accuse her of all the stuff she did to me. And she was so pissed that I managed to get a confession out of her. She was very much just like, yeah, I did that. Literally over me not wanting to spend every waking second with her. And the best part of it is that she threatened me on camera. So I cut out the part about the poison makeup and told her if she didn't tell my friends, coaches, and significant other what she was doing, I would send the video to everyone. So she admitted to all of her crimes and I got back on the team. I got my friends back and my boyfriend apologized. I ended up totally fine and she ended up losing credibility with basically everyone. If any of you guys have a story you'd like me to share on my TikTok, follow my Instagram and I'll show you how. So in the summer of 2020, my baby daddy was working as a salesman. But obviously, there is a lot that can go wrong with this. So at the time, we were making bank and getting that bag. Literally, I kid you not, $5 grand every couple of days. So you can say we were doing pretty well for ourselves at that time. But one particular night that he had a sale, I had a really bad gut feeling. These people asked to meet him about a block away from our house. and this sales product was worth about $3,500. But he had already made about $1,700 this morning, so I was kind of concerned about this next sale. I was laying in my room about to tell him not to go when he just went ahead and left. And that's when I heard yelling from down the block. I was like, oh my God, and I looked out my window and there was 4 guys surrounding him with masks on. That's when I heard my baby daddy yell for me to bring the money. I immediately said okay and started to rush to grab everything. As I was running down the stairs with the money and approaching them, I noticed that one of the guys had a gun to the back of my baby daddy's head. Follow my Insta for part 2. Storytime part 2 about my baby daddy having a bad, sale. So as I start to go to them, they start to head up the stairs to me. And as we're approaching each other, I can see that one of the guys has a gun to the back of my baby daddy's head. Another guy has a knife to his throat, and the other one just looks like he was the muscle of the group. They were literally walking to come to our house. I made sure it was entirely pitch black within my place so that they couldn't see anything that was there. And I just brought them the money. I was like, take it, here it is. And he just stared at it. And then I said a little bit louder, take it, and he was just looking at it. And then I screamed, take it, it's here. And that's whenever he took the money and started to push my baby daddy up the stairs. I was pushed to the side as they looked around to see if they could take anything else, but they obviously couldn't see anything and just left. Neither of us slept for several days, thinking that they would probably come back, but thankfully they never did. My baby daddy is still a salesman to this day. We're just more cautious and I'm working on getting my education so I can get a steady job. If you have a story, DM me on Insta. So I can't really tell if it's romantic or not that my boyfriend put me up as the prize to a race without me knowing. To give some backstory, we were dating on and off for about 1.5 years, and we'll just go ahead and call this man Brad. We met in health class and he was kind of an a-hole, but I honestly fell so hard for him. Well, around this time, he sold his old car and got a beautiful 2015 black Charger. And let me tell y'all, I would feel like such a baddie when he'd come pick me up. And when I moved an hour away, he would still come pick me up weekly and take me to nice hotels. Well, one day he was talking to me about how obsessed his friends are with me, which I thought was so strange, but he was like, yeah, I showed them your picture. They all think you are so fine. And I guess they all talked about how they wish they could have a chance with someone like me and blah, blah, blah. And that's when he decided to enter his fancy little car into a race. He asked me if I wanted to come see him perform, but we were in the dead of winter, so I was like, probably not. That's when he started begging me and told me that the prize was really important. So I decided to go. Follow my Insta. Storytime part 2 to my boyfriend putting me up as the prize for a race without me knowing. So when I showed up, I had a feeling that the prize was pretty important. So when I finally saw him, I was like, hey, so what exactly is the prize? And he gave me the weirdest look and he was like, babe, you know how all my friends think you're hot, right? I was like, I mean, sure. And he goes, well, I told them whoever wins gets to be your boyfriend. So I was like, WTF, Brad? Why would you do that? And he just looks at me and goes, don't worry, I'll win. And I was like, well, you better. So I literally stood out there in the cold watching a race that I could barely see. There was someone really tall in front of me. My heart almost dropped several times because I kept hearing Brad is gonna lose. And then I pushed the guy in front of me out of the way and saw Brad cross the finish line. One of his friends actually came up to us after the race and claimed that Brad cheated to win. He was probably just a sore loser, but we celebrated the rest of the night. If you guys have a story you'd like to share, follow me and DM me on Instagram. So put a finger down if half of your biological family is now behind bars for plotting your murder. So when I was 14, I made the realization that I was pansexual. I at the time did not know my own family's feelings about sexuality. So I decided to come out to them. But nothing could have prepared me for the extreme homophobic reaction that was in store. I just want to put a massive trigger warning over the rest of this story. After coming out to them, I literally remember nothing. I woke up completely foggy and out of it in a hospital. I was then let know by the doctors that I had a major head concussion and possible amnesia. Obviously, I was entirely confused and had no idea what happened. So that's when I was let know that all 3 of my parents, I have a stepdad as well, were in custody. They were being charged with abuse and assault. And then 2 of my aunts were also taken in for tampering with a crime scene. And literally the only reason that I was even found was because the neighbors heard me scream and called the cops. And now I was a ward of the state and had foster parents. Once the trial started, that's when all the crazy details about the crime came to light. Follow me on Insta for part 2. Storytime part 2 to my biological family plotting my murder. So this is where the trial began. Thankfully, my neighbors not only heard me, but they also watched some of the events occur through the back door. They watched my family remove a glass gun cabinet, which apparently my head went through. They assumed that I was going to die, so my aunts came over and started to scrub the entire place with bleach. And when asked why exactly this incident happened, my stepfather with no hesitation stated, because that no good for anything piece of ish thinks she has a choice over who she sleeps with. My aunts were sentenced 15 to 20 years and had to pay up to 10 grand in fines. Both my stepfather and my biological father got life in prison, and my mom got 60 to life for her assistance in the whole thing. She also didn't notify the authorities and failed to appear for her first trial. After the trial was over, I ended up getting adopted by 2 amazing men who live in Russia, which is my home country. They later adopted my siblings, and I'm now 24 with an amazing career and family. And even though I've changed my entire name, my biological family still tries to reach out. Okay, so who in the world would kill this beautiful Instagram influencer? Alexis Sharkey's death was just ruled as a homicide, and it has been on my brain all week. I'll be showing you guys how to do this look, so let's get into the case. So Alexis was extremely smart, very much an overachiever. She graduated top of her class at the University of Pittsburgh and had big dreams of going to med school. However, she wanted to travel in the meantime, so she decided to take a break. So she went to Texas to work at a Twin Peaks. She had no issues making friends, but recently went through a breakup. But one of the girls she worked with at Twin Peaks noticed a thing going on between her and a regular. This guy's name was Tom Sharkey. He was an oil field consultant and traveled a lot for his job, which was perfect because that's why she was taking a break from college. They began dating and she started to work for the hair company Monet, which a lot of you guys know to be a pyramid scheme. However, Miss Girl was so good at it. She was making $400,000 a year as an executive director and traveling and posting it everywhere. Because of this, her Instagram rose to 20,000 followers. She met a lot of new friends and eventually Tom proposed. Go to part 2 to see the rest of the look. Welcome back to the case of Alexis Sharkey. We're doing this makeup look, by the way. So Tom proposed to her and they moved to Colorado, and this is when she took up vlogging on YouTube. And they look absolutely precious. They seem like such a good couple. They seem like they're genuinely so happy in every single vlog, but the problem is you never really know what's truly going on based on social media. So her and Tom seem like the perfect couple. They get married, move to Houston together, and she joins Bumble BFF to make a new group of friends. She ends up finding a group that she meshes with really well and combining them with her Monet friends. Well, quarantine hits and she takes to TikTok. New way to promote yourself. Pretty much all of us went on TikTok after quarantine. So she was finally able to show more of her personality online, promote Monet, and she put Tom and her friends in it. You can still go look these up. And then her and one of her friends decide to go to Marfa, Texas, and then Tulum, Mexico. Keep this in mind. This is actually the last photo that she posted on her Instagram in Tulum. Anyways, by the time she got back, it was Thanksgiving, and she went to her friend Tanya's house for it. Without Tom, which is so strange for newlyweds. I forgot to mention that her friends would say that she would barely even bring up Tom, which is so sus, but go to part 3 for the events that unfold. Welcome back to part 3 of the case of Alexis Sharkey. We are doing this makeup look, and this is the part where everything happens. So she leaves her friend Tanya's house on Thanksgiving and lets Tanya know that she's going out to drink. She was picked up by a car, went out drinking until 3 a.m., and then texted Tanya on her way back to let her know she was coming back to pick up her car from her house. Well, the next day is Black Friday, which is a huge deal for people who run businesses, and she's obviously affiliated with Monet. And because she works from her phone, she's never off of it, like a story every other hour. All her friends wake up Black Friday, nothing. Nothing is on her social media. But that morning in the friend group chat, they get a text from her. She wanted to hang out and go out drinking, but none of them were free then, so they made plans for the next day. Well, the next day comes around, she doesn't show up, and no one's heard from her. So her husband Tom phones up John, one of her friend's boyfriends, and is like, hey, have you heard from Alexis? We got into a really bad fight last night, and I haven't seen her. She got into a black car, and I haven't seen her since. Sorry guys, here's the rhinestones. But his story kept changing. He would sometimes say she left in a black car, sometimes say she left on foot, would sometimes say that they had fought, would sometimes say that they didn't have a fight. She had her phone, didn't have her phone, or that he was even following her around on Find Friends. Go to the next part. Welcome to the next part of the case of Alexis Sharkey. We are finishing up this look. So it is obviously sus that Tom keeps changing his story. My eyes are headed, so I'm gonna have to go up on the crystals. But her friends are extremely worried. No answer on the group chat. They still hung out hoping that she would show up, but never showed up. But Tanya gets extremely worried and calls Alexis's mom Stacy. It turned out Tom already talked to Stacy, and this is how they knew everything was getting really, really bad. So they took to social media, started posting everywhere, justice for Lex. But sadly, her body ended up being found. She was on the side of the road, completely naked, only a few miles from where she lived. Let me just say, her mom and the rest of her friends were beyond broken over this news. It's really important to note, though, that there was no signs of trauma. And because she's so beautiful and active on social media, the internet went crazy. They were thinking possibly drugs are involved, maybe a smothering. But her friends and family knew that this was no accident. And that's when the friend that she went on the Marfa trip with stated that Tom and Alexis were actually going through a divorce, and Alexis said she was scared for her life. Go to the last part. Here's the last part of the Alexis Sharkey case. And we're almost done with this look. And again, this is just what her friend said. We don't know for sure. But her friend was coming out with all this stuff about Tom sending Alexis nasty messages while they were on their vacation together. And that in Tulum, she met a man named Sebastian. And she was very, very interested in the Sebastian guy. And he was actually the friend that ended up picking her up the night they went out drinking, before she was found dead. Well, there's a lot of rumors about them already being together, potentially Tom already knowing, but we don't really know for sure right now. Well, the medical examiner's conclusion was that she was strangled. So now the entire internet is suspicious of Tom. He's changed his story. He also referred to her in past tense before they found her body, but he's gotten an extreme amount of death threats and has kind of stayed away from being interviewed. He only did one quick phone interview and didn't even finish it. I'm sure his mental health is just awful right now. Weird thing to add to this is that he's the next of kin, so he was supposed to claim the body, but he ghosted Alexis's mom and never did. The medical examiner ended up giving her mom the power though, so they do have the body back now. And while there's a lot of people still suspicious of Tom, people are not shy to question Sebastian or her new Bumble friends. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. So this is probably my favorite story about my cheating ex. As many stories as I have on him, this one happened after we were broken up. He had left me for a girl that he was seeing on the side, and we hadn't spoken in months. We had both blocked each other on pretty much everything. But as most girls do, I do have my fake Instagram account, and he seemed pretty happy in his new relationship. I believed that until I got a DM from a girl. She sent me screenshots of messages and fake accounts that he had made to communicate to her. So he had literally been cheating on the girl that he was with now with her the whole time. I literally don't understand people sometimes. Both him and I were in the same friend group, mostly because we pretty much grew up together. So I talked to another member of the group about what we should do. Now, I believe in karma and that people get what they deserve, but who's to say that I'm not karma? So we decided to show up to his house with not only the girl he was cheating with, but all the girls he cheated on me with. And take care of this, I kid you not, game show style. Follow, share, interact, and I'll do a part 2. The thing that shocks me the most about Min is the audacity. I don't know what the comments are going to be yet, but I want to clarify 1, that him and I were best friends for a long time before dating, so that's why we had the same friend group. 2, kind of bold to show up at someone's house, kind of also bold to cheat on someone, but we were neighbors. So we went in, microphone in hand, and announced each girl one by one. He was speechless. Like, he didn't even know what to say. If you've ever just seen someone like entangled in so many lies that he thinks that he's never gonna get caught for, all of a sudden get caught for all of them, that was it. When his friend went in, he was like, hey, do you have something you want to share with me? Like, what's been going on in your relationship? He admitted to nothing. So that's why we announced girl number 1, girl number 2, girl number 3, until we were all there and he had no choice but to tell us the truth. So yeah, don't be a scumbag, don't cheat. And if you do, karma will happen eventually, even if it's years down the line.
So this is the story about a time I dated a sociopath. I went to a friend of mine's birthday party and met this guy. He was really cute, we made great conversation, and he also had a job at a really well-known store. However, I was flirting with his friend a lot more, which I think actually is what attracted him to me. With each bar we went to, he kept trying to get closer and closer to me, and by the end of the night, he asked for my number. I said sure, and a few days later, he called me and asked me out on a date. We decided to go for a hike, and this is where the weird interactions start. He brought up the fact that I'm going into counseling, and that's what attracted him to me because he feels like no one can figure him out. He talked about how sales is the best job for him because he can always temporarily put on masks for people and be whatever a person wants him to be. But it only lasts for so long. He could never keep a relationship for more than 3 months. He said he couldn't keep up the act of what the other girls wanted him to be. Not long after this, I got a call from his cousin who I'd never spoken to before telling me to get out. Follow, share, and I'll do a part 2.
Alright, this is part 2 to the sociopath story. So that was extremely sus of a cousin to be calling whenever I hadn't even met him before. He expressed that this was a pattern for him. To find girls, date them for a while, infiltrate their life, and then leave them and have no guilt. He also expressed on multiple occasions that he's never felt heartbreak before, even though he's had multiple breakups. The girl that he was with before me had multiple kids. He came into her life, pretended to be a dad figure for a little bit, and then left her. I didn't know that story till later, but I was horrified. I continued to go on a few more dates with him, and he told me everything I wanted to hear. He would talk about spending holidays, meeting my family, potentially buying a house for us, and I just got sucked right into it, like probably everyone else was. Then a few hours after we had a really good date, he called to say he was confused if this was the right timing for us or not. I just kind of accepted it and was like, okay. However, a day later, he started dating my best friend's little sister, who was freshly out of high school, and this man's 27. And that's just what he does. He just gets off to the heartbreak because he emotionally can't understand it. Follow from our story times.
This is one of the biggest lies I ever told to get myself out of trouble. So back in high school, I used to run on the cross country team, but by no means was I competitive or athletic at all. I was honestly just there for the social aspect of it. All throughout my freshman year of high school, I would literally run to Cold Stone Creamery to get ice cream and bring it back to everyone on my bus. I don't know if that tells you what kind of athlete I was, but yeah. Somehow I still didn't get caught for doing this stuff, and by later in high school, my friends and I decided to pretty much never go. I mean, we would show up to practice, but we would wait until everyone was ahead of us and then turn the opposite direction and sprint to Starbucks. We literally did this almost every single day. And then we would call cute boys from other schools to come meet us over there. We would literally get coffee with them, go shopping, and then once we saw the team getting close again, we would just run back to school and pretend like we did the workout. Until one day, I was called down to the principals. They said it had to do with my cross-country attendance. Follow, share, and I'll tell you what happened next.
So for starters, hopefully this makeup suits you a little bit better than the Tide Pod look did, but I'd also like to say that I've never gotten caught for anything before. At least like not school-wise. But I guess somewhere in this, the coaches started to take attendance mid-run. Sneaky. So I obviously had some absences. However, it was just me and one other girl that was called down to the office.
So when I went in to talk to her, the only thing that could come to my mind to explain the absences was that I had an injury and I wasn't included in the workouts, so I just left and the coaches must have forgotten. And she bought it. However, rip my friend. They actually had camera footage of her leaving, so it wasn't like there was anything I could do to get her out of it. She got 3 days of detention, I believe, and I just went back the next day like nothing was wrong. But I ended up getting into a lot more trouble that I didn't actually get caught for, and that'll be next. Also, if you like these contacts, they're from TTDI. I got an adorable packaging today, and you can use code MiniCooperLiz for 10% off. Follow for more story times. So this is a story time about my insane boss. So as a lot of you guys know, for 4 years, I worked as a Disney princess. It wasn't in Disney World or anything, it was a place locally, but it was still one of the most fun jobs I've ever had. Our boss, however, was her own kind of person. She was continuously going through cycles of being on and off with different boyfriends, and we could always tell if they were together or not by the way she treated us. Like, anytime there was a fight, she would always take it out on us. There was one time where we were just setting up in the back, and she walked back yelling, saying to stop gossiping about her. Literally none of us were even talking. She also had a massive issue with hoarding, so like all of the back rooms were filled with junk. She started to get a lot of calls from tax collectors, and she would always make one of us answer the phone. Eventually, they started to stop by, and she would just go hide. A couple weeks after this, I came in for work, and the entire place had been robbed. Things stolen, glass everywhere. And she told me my social security had been taken. However, I knew something was off. Like and share, and I'll do a part 2. So when I got into work that day and I just walked in and saw the glass everywhere, I just turned to her and I was like, what happened? Like, she wasn't explaining it to anyone. She was just sitting there at the desk acting like it was a normal day. And she was like, well, we were robbed and they took a lot of stuff. However, we made the observation that everything that was stolen was something that was broken. Almost as if the robber knew that that printer, that MP3 player, and that computer wasn't working. We also all made the observation that the glass was outside of the building. So it was like someone broke the glass from inside. The police were up there asking questions, and she was talking to them about how my social security was stolen along with a few of the other girls. But I guess it wasn't an issue since we were under 18. I don't know. But our theory was that she was probably cashing a check from that whole robbery thing and that it was probably covered by insurance. Either way, she did not have the money to stay in business, so we had new management come in like real soon. I would also like to add that one of the things being hoarded at this place were Webkins. There was hundreds as far as the eye can see. I have so many more stories coming, so don't be shy. Follow me. So I need to tell you guys a story about a stalker I had back in high school. It's actually interesting because I've still never figured out who it is. Back during my senior year of high school, my friends and I got into a lot of stuff. We had a small group and we would throw parties at my friend's house after school. This was maybe like a total of 12 people. Like I stated in my last story time, I worked as a Disney princess. So one day me and my friend dressed as Snow White had our phones start blowing up in the middle of work. It was from a random number and we were both getting them. After we were off our shift, we decided to look at the messages. Both of us literally got the worst feeling. Whoever was messaging us was going by the alias of Bob Wang, and he knew everything. He knew everything that went down at the parties, he knew everything about our personal lives, and he knew everything about school and work too. I asked him who he was, and he sent me a random picture of a guy, and said that he went to camp with one of my best friends from church. Pretty soon after this, he made an Instagram. We thought that there was no way it wasn't one of the 12 people. But who? Follow, share, and add me on Instagram, and I'll do a part 2. Welcome to Stalker Part 2. So obviously I sent the picture that he sent me to my friend to check to make sure that he didn't know him. I'm pretty sure he got a random stock image of a guy at camp off of Google. And my friend was like, no, I've never seen that guy in my life. Which makes sense. This person also had a personal vendetta against my boyfriend at the time. So it kind of made me think it could have been someone in his life. My boyfriend had gotten kicked out of the school that he was at. So most of the things said to me was about that situation and just harassment. But it was totally different from my friend. So I don't know what his issue is or why he eventually decided to take it over to Instagram. Us getting messages from him lasted maybe 2 weeks before. This is one of the few things that I still have left from the conversations that was on my Instagram that's like decently okay to show. But he pretty much just threatened and harassed until we went off to college. And you can look at the Instagram, but it's like inactive. They never posted anything. I had honestly forgotten about this for a while, but then once I remembered, I was like,
I just don't know who that was. Maybe one of you guys can super sleuth it. But if you like my stories, follow me here and follow me on Instagram for more content.